All right, so if you're an indie game developer today, you're staring down a massive decision that honestly wasn't really a thing a few years back. The big question is, do you stick with the industry giant Unity, or do you jump on board with the fast-rising open source challenger Godot? This is the showdown everyone's talking about, so let's get right into it. For what felt like forever, the choice was a no-brainer. If you were an indie, you used Unity. Simple as that. But as this quote points out, that's just not the world we live in anymore. The whole landscape has shifted, and what used to be a straight road is now a major fork in the road for basically every creator out there. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about why this divide even happened, that whole shift in trust. Then we'll get into the nerdy stuff, their core architecture, nodes versus prefabs, and a really cool workflow feature in Godot. After that, we'll zoom out to look at the ecosystem, performance, and of course, the price. And we'll wrap it all up with some real talk on how you can pick the right engine for your project. So, how did we get here? What really caused this massive split in the community? Well, it wasn't just about a new feature or a bug fix. It really came down to one thing: trust. Unity made some business moves that, frankly, sent a shockwave through the developer world and made a lot of people wonder if they could really rely on the platform long term. But, and this is a big but, despite all that controversy, let's be clear, Unity is still an absolute behemoth. I mean, look at these numbers. It's got nearly half the market, and it's behind a whopping 71% of the top mobile games. So this isn't a story about a dying giant. Not at all. It's about a king who's suddenly facing a very, very serious challenger. And here it is, the tipping point. The 2023 runtime fee controversy, that was the catalyst. It was this new pricing plan that, even though they walked it back, it shattered the trust developers had. For so many people, that was the final straw. It was the moment they went from thinking about Godot to actually downloading it and moving their projects over. All right, let's get into the first big technical difference, and this is a huge one. Because at their very core, Unity and Godot want you to think about building a game in two completely different ways. And trust me, this isn't some small, nerdy detail. It shapes everything you do. So with Unity, you start with what's called an entity, which is basically nothing. It's an empty container, a blank slate. From there, you start attaching components to it. You bolt on a sprite renderer, you add a physics body, you clip on a script. You're essentially building your game object piece by piece, adding all the specific parts it needs. Godot's approach, completely different. It's all built around nodes. And in Godot, everything is a node that already does something. A sprite is a node, a sound player is a node, a timer is a node. You build things by arranging these nodes in a tree, kind of like a family tree with parents and children. And here's the really brilliant part. You can take a whole collection of nodes, an entire scene, and just drop it into another scene as if it were a single, simple node. And this quote from developer David Amador just hits the nail on the head. He points out that this scene-based system makes reusable objects, what they call prefabs, feel way more solid in Godot. He says, in Unity, it always felt more fragile, especially when you start nesting prefabs inside of other prefabs, which, as any Unity dev knows, can be a real headache. Okay, next up, let's focus on one specific area where Godot gets a ton of praise. It might sound like a small thing, but believe me, it's a game changer that saves so much time and frustration. Building your user interface. Yeah, if you've ever had to build a UI for a game, this question probably gives you flashbacks, right? The nightmare of going through every single button and panel and label one by one just to make sure they all look the same, it can be so tedious. Well, Godot has this incredibly elegant solution called the theme system. Here's how it works. You create one single theme file. In that file, you define all your styles, your fonts, your colors, your margins, everything. Then you just apply that theme to your entire project. And just like that, if you decide you want to change the color of every single button in your game, you change it in one place, and boom, it's done. And this analogy is just perfect. A developer said it's basically like using CSS on a website. If you've ever touched web development, you know exactly how powerful that is. Godot brings that same change it once, change it everywhere power to game development. And for a lot of people, it's honestly a revelation. Okay, so let's zoom out from these specific features for a second and look at the bigger picture. We're talking about the whole ecosystem, performance, size, and speed. And you guessed it, the differences here are just as dramatic. Man, this table really tells a story, doesn't it?
I mean, just look at the startup time. Godot is up and running in like 5 seconds. Unity, you could go make a coffee. Then there's the licensing. Godot is 100% free forever. Unity is subscription-based. And two other huge ones. Godot's native 2D is widely considered fantastic, while Unity is the undisputed champ for native console support right out of the box.
And then we get to the install size. Honestly, this one is just wild. The entire Godot engine is about 100 megabytes. You could literally put it on a cheap USB stick and carry it in your pocket. A standard Unity install, we're talking 5 gigabytes or more. That massive difference in size really tells you a lot about the philosophy behind each engine. Now, when it comes to the ecosystem, this is where Unity has a huge advantage. It's been around forever, so it has this massive, mature asset store, tons of third-party tools, and that built-in console support we mentioned. It's absolutely battle-tested. Godot's ecosystem is much more grassroots. It's growing, it's mostly free, and it's powered by an incredibly passionate open-source community. Okay, let's talk about the part that really matters for a lot of people, the price. For an indie dev, especially when you're just starting out, this can be the deciding factor. And on this point, the two engines are polar opposites. Godot's price tag is, well, there isn't one. It's zero. It's completely free under what's called the MIT license, which is super permissive. That means no royalties, no fees, no revenue sharing, nothing. You can make a game, sell 1 million copies, and you don't owe them a dime. What you earn is 100% yours. Now, Unity has a pretty generous free plan to start. As long as you're making less than $200,000 a year, you're good. But the moment your game takes off and you cross that line, you have to upgrade to Unity Pro. And that's going to cost you around $2,200 a year per person on your team. So we've gone through the core design, the workflow, the ecosystem, the price, everything. Which brings us to the big finale. Which one should you choose? And the answer, of course, is it depends. It really, really depends on what you're building. Let's make this simple. You should probably choose Unity if you're making a big 3D game, a mobile or VR project, or something you absolutely need to get on consoles from day one. It's just more mature in those areas. But you should definitely look at Godot if you're making a 2D game. You love to prototype quickly, or you just really care about having a fast, lightweight, and completely open source tool. I absolutely love this quote. It just nails the vibe perfectly. Godot is that rising indie band that everyone's excited about, the one that stands for freedom and open source ideals. And Unity, it's the established rock star, the corporate powerhouse. It really captures the two different personalities of these engines. And that really brings us to the final big picture idea here. This whole Godot versus Unity thing, it isn't just about game engines. It's a sign of a much bigger shift. As powerful, free, open source tools keep getting better and better, you have to wonder, what does that mean for the future of all the big commercial software that's dominated creative industries for so long? This isn't just a showdown for 2026. It might just be a preview of what's to come for everyone.